Hi Anand.
Srikanth, what a pleasure to welcome you to WaterAid India. We have
Thank
people
you.
from 10 states who are very, very eager to listen to you. We have our central office colleagues, including senior management team and country management team. Before we hand it over to you, let me tell you that we really acknowledge the amazing work that you are doing in terms of strengthening cooperative federalism, and you are here to educate us on a financing mechanism which is appreciated but not so well understood. So I thought, let me catch none else than Srikanth to educate us on this very important topic. Srikanth, we are really delighted, and my colleague Sushmita Guha would like to do a formal introduction of you for everyone's benefit, and then we would hand it over to you for your session. Trust this is fine, Srikanth?
Absolutely, Anand. Thank you so much for such a gracious introduction. You've set the bar really high. I only hope we are able to live up to it. I have my colleague Merin also joining in just less than a minute, but this works
Sure.
well for me.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Srikanth. So, Sushmita, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for initiating this inspirational series. And thank you, sir, Srikanth, sir. So let me introduce, sir. Srikanth Viswanathan is the Chief Executive Officer of Janaagraha Centre for Citizenship and Democracy, a Bangalore-based non-profit working towards the mission of transforming quality of life in India's cities and towns. He also serves as Executive Director of Jana Urban Space Foundation, a sister organization of Janaagraha that works on the spatial planning and design of cities. Srikanth is one of India's leading practitioners of city systems reforms and champions the application of systems thinking to urban reform agendas. He works closely with the senior leadership in union and state government and constitutional bodies, such as Controller and Auditor General of India and the Finance Commission of India, to shape and implement long-term reforms to city systems in India. An associate member of the Institute of Chartered Accountant for over 23 years, Srikanth worked in banking and audit before joining Janaagraha in 2011. Sir, at WaterAid, we are keen to listen to you and learn from you. And over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
Sushmita.
Sushmita. Once again, thank you so much, Anand, for extending this invitation. Absolute pleasure to address WaterAid. Of course, I've heard of WaterAid, several times over the last 15 years that I've been in this sector. So it's absolute pleasure. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Merin Sunny. She's a young senior associate who joined us straight out of her master's program in TIS Hyderabad as a public finance fellow. So we run a women's fellowship in public finance, and she joined our first cohort. We've just signed up the second cohort a couple of weeks ago. She joined the first cohort, and we plunged her straight into a high-stakes effort with the 16th Finance Commission, and she's done some exemplary work. My two other colleagues, Prabhat and Apula, who really led this engagement with the Finance Commission, unfortunately are not able to join. One has a conflicting speaking engagement in Bihar, and the other is on leave. So I'm really going to be the spokesperson of the work that was actually done by Prabhat, Apula, and Merin. And there were several others who supported them in this effort. So please indulge me. Anand, if you agree, I can give a high-level opening for about 5-10 minutes, and then Merin can run through our slides, which are incidentally highly focused on urban local governments, not so much on rural, but Merin has put together, I think, one slide on rural local governments as well. So we'll walk you through those, and then we can engage in an open Q&A after that.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect.
Yeah. Meanwhile, for those of you who fear that you might forget your questions, do keep dropping them in the chat. So we have the benefit of those questions when we open up the Q&A. I've been with Jana now for about 15 years, as Sushmita's introduction mentioned. I do not have a background in development. So I'm an out and out practitioner who's come in from the outside. Unlike Merin, who's got a master's in urban policy, and I'm sure most of you are also development sector professionals. At Janaagraha, we are a practitioner organization. We are not a research organization. So a lot of our work is around how do you get governments to do their job well. And we started off our journey as an organization that believed citizen participation is the silver bullet to transform cities. Our co-founders, Ramesh and Swati, lived overseas for about 10 years. They were exposed to the kind of active volunteerism and active citizen participation in civic governance in cities in the US and UK. Thereafter, they studied the Porto Alegre model of participatory budgeting in Brazil, and they founded Janaagraha as a platform for citizen participation, beginning with a participatory budgeting campaign. But within the first couple of years, they realized that if the municipal law or the broader municipal governance system does not really provide for citizen participation, then that is only going to remain an isolated effort. So they started working on governance reforms thereafter. That's how we became a systems change organization. We focus on broadly 4 areas. One is on urban planning and urban design. We focus on decentralization and participation, everything to do with empowering mayors and councils and catalyzing platforms for citizen participation. Then we focus on public finance, which is where this work fits in. And a very new area of work, or a nascent area of work, is on human resource management reforms in cities and in the state urban development department. And we try and do these city systems reforms, as we call these 4 areas, at the intersection of climate, public health, gender, and urban poverty. These intersectional areas of work are fairly nascent. We've been doing them for about 5-6 years now, but we want to be more and more deliberate about outcomes in these areas. Our antecedents of working with Finance Commission goes back to our work with the 13th Finance Commission, when our co-founder had engaged with Dr. Vijay Kelkar and his team to push for performance grants linked to accountability conditions, audit accounts, accountability conditions. Then with the 14th Finance Commission, we had done one meeting with the 14th Finance Commission, again focused on audit and accountability. And there we had also done some advocacy with the CAG of India, who in turn incorporated some of our suggestions with the 14th Finance Commission. But the first time we worked very closely with the Finance Commission was with the 15th Finance Commission, where we had a formal MOU, and we worked for, must have been a year and a half, if I recollect right. And several of our conditions were accepted by the 15th Finance Commission, several important conditions, including the one on increasing the share for urban local governments and the local government share of grants. Secondly was creating basic entry-level conditions for claiming grants, including publication of audited annual accounts. And we had also done some work on property tax for the World Bank, which in turn got presented to them. They had also incorporated a suggestion on municipal shared services, which we had advocated to the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, which got incorporated by the 15th FC and so on. And thereafter, I'm happy to report that basis that work, and simultaneously, we were also working with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, basis that relationship, a portal called cityfinance.in, Merin, if you could drop that URL in the chat, was launched in June of 2020. And today, for the first time in the history of India, more than 4,300 urban local governments publish their audited annual accounts. And we in turn work with a public finance consultant to make those accounts comparable, because all of these ULGs are part of different states and different municipal laws, even within the same state. They report out their accounts in different formats. So to make them comparable, we undertake some efforts at the back end. We are also pleased to report that basis the interest shown by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, there is a fair degree of digitalization in the manner in which ULGs meet conditions of the 15th FC, the manner in which state governments approve their submissions, and how the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs thereafter recommends ULGs for fund disbursement to the Ministry of Finance. So ULGs no longer have to process paperwork and send them physically, etc. on file. It's done on City Finance. This information is not yet available in the public. The the audit of annual accounts, the audited annual accounts are available in the public domain. But this entire digital grant management is not yet available in the public domain. We are hoping that with the 16 Finance Commission grants, the MOHUA takes the next step. We also work with, like Sushmita mentioned, with the CAG of India, with Niti Aayog, and with broadly 3 state governments, Odisha, Uttar Pradesh, and Assam, which are our focus states. We are hoping to also work in Karnataka, and we also work with state finance commissions. We've so far worked with the Karnataka State Finance Commission, Odisha State Finance Commission, and Haryana State Finance Commission on, again, strengthening local governments and local government finances and financial accountability and so on. So that's a broad perspective on our work. So in everything that we do, we try and orient towards how can citizens get responsive, accountable governance, how can they have a voice in local governance. And we also focus on building state capacities, because we realize that one of the reasons why in India we are not able to get responsive, accountable governance is because of lack of state capacities. So we work with governments to create those state capacities. Fundamental to our work is the belief that India cannot achieve high economic growth and accomplish human development goals without empowering local governments. So we feel whether it is economic growth or other human development goals, including climate, gender, urban poverty alleviation, public health, etc., we believe that global evidence, global experience shows that empowered local governments are so important for it. And we also look up to the rural local governance paradigm in India, because we've realized that what is closest to our context for urban local governments is the experience with Panchayati Raj institutions in India, where right from Gandhiji's emphasis, but several committee recommendations, several initiatives. Karnataka did some pioneering work in the 80s. Thereafter, the 73rd and 74th Amendment came in. And 73rd Amendment has always been considered as superior to the 74th Amendment. And both due to historical experience and the 73rd Amendment, many of us in the urban sector feel that Panchayati Raj works better than Nagar Raj. We'd love to hear from you during the Q&A section. I've also heard the contrary, where people have also told me that there can be some kind of state capture where the Gram Pradhan colludes with engineers and contractors, etc. But by and large, I think the design, at least, of Panchayati Raj institutions with their focus on a far greater number of functions. They've got devolution of 20 plus functions, whereas in urban it's only 18 as per the constitution. Even among those 18, many of them remain on paper. Similarly, the work done by village health, sanitation, and nutrition committees, the role of the Gram Pradhan in convergence of many of these schemes, including where benefits go to individual people or households. Many of these aspects are missing in the urban area. Similarly, the Gram Sabha, there is no equivalent of a Gram Sabha in cities. So for many of these reasons, we all look up to Panchayati Raj institutions and rural local governments. And over the next couple of years, we are hoping that we can understand better about PRIs and rural local governance in India and incorporate those good practices and use them in our advocacy with state governments and the union. So you should forgive us if we are not able to answer too many of your questions in the RLG portion of the grants, but you can then enlighten us on that. And we are open to actually studying some of those slightly more. So if you feel that you don't have focus on public finance and you want us to focus on particular areas, it may take us some time, but we are happy to invest energies in studying some parts of FC recommendations of particularly 15th and 16th on the rural and come back to you. With that, I'd request Merin to flash the slides. I'll cover the first couple of slides which set the tone, and then request Merin to take us through the detailed slides.
So Srikanth, amazing landing of the subject. And for my colleagues here, they know I have just joined WaterAid. I come from Niti Aayog. I was there as mission director for aspirational districts and blocks program. And all our colleagues, including the CEO, BVR Subramaniam, he was so appreciative of the work, that you were doing, evidence-based, such analytical. So in my new avatar, definitely Srikanth, let's collaborate and we can take you to several gram panchayats and you can tell us, how do we influence the urban side of the play using the rural, but such a solid landing. So go ahead, please.
Thank you so much, Anand. We'll surely take you up on that. I think that greater synergies of local governments in India is important for us to convince political and administrative leaders at the state level and also at the union level of the need to further strengthen local government. So that synergy between rural and urban is missing in India.
Yeah.
You either have folks like us specializing in urban or you have a bunch of other actors who specialize in rural. I think the twain should start meeting. So thank you for that offer. We'll take you up on that.
Yeah, thanks.
We can go to the next. Yeah, you can. Go to the next. Yes. So overall, the headline is that there's been a very substantial outlay of about 7.9 lakh crores for local governments by the 16th Finance Commission. The 16th Finance Commission's award period is 2026 to 2031. For those of you who may not be fully familiar with the Finance Commission, it is an interesting body for several reasons. One, it is a constitutional body, but it is not a permanent constitutional body. You have other constitutional bodies like the Office of the Chief Election Commissioner or the Election Commission of India. You have the body of the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, etc., which are constitutional bodies, but they are permanent bodies. The Finance Commission of India is a constitutional body because the Constitution of India requires the union government to constitute a body called the Finance Commission. However, it is not permanent and it is constituted by the union government. So the terms of reference of the Finance Commission is written by the Ministry of Finance and the membership is determined by the Ministry of Finance. So that is, and similarly, the report of the Finance Commission of India is tabled in the Parliament of India. So that is one thing for us to be aware of. The second thing is it's a temporary body in the sense that it is constituted every 5 years, typically for a term of 2 years, during which time they visit every single state in India. So that's another standout feature that they visit every state in India. And when they visit the states, it's a very, very high-powered meeting. It's the Chief Minister himself or herself, along with the entire senior leadership team of the state that is there for the interaction with the Finance Commission. And they make almost like a detailed presentation on the state's financial position and the state's submission to the Finance Commission on how the Finance Commission should think about its own recommendations. So what is the key role of the Finance Commission? The key role of the Finance Commission is to say, okay, the union government is collecting income tax, the union government from both individuals and corporates. The union government is collecting its share of the GST, and the union government collects customs duties, etc. So it has what is called the gross tax revenues, the entire tax revenue of the union government. From there, suppose you subtract cesses and surcharges, which are in turn levied on these taxes. You get a very large amount of money, right? Of the order of upwards of 20 lakh crores and so on. That amount of money, how should it be divided between the union government and the state government? The reason this function is important is because most of the expenditure obligations are on the state governments. Most subjects that impact your life and my life and those of our families directly, like education, like health, like poverty alleviation, etc., primarily are state subjects. They are the domain of states. So states have high expenditure obligations, but they don't have commensurate income streams. There is a logic for it. It's far more efficient and elegant for the union government to levy and collect many of these taxes and then divide them through a mechanism like the Finance Commission. So it's a very elegant aspect of our democracy and of fiscal federal relations in India. So what the Finance Commission does is it comes with a formula basis which gross tax revenues for a 5-year period will be shared between the union government and state governments. And they also give the formula on what each state government will receive. So one is called vertical devolution, which is from the union to states. The other is called horizontal devolution, which is between states. This is the primary mandate of the Finance Commission. Many finance commissions, one after the other, have organically increased their mandate with respect to local governments. So the constitution is not very upfront with respect to the role of the Finance Commission of India with respect to local governments, but successive finance commissions, to their credit, have empowered themselves to give, greater and greater salience to local governments, and they've kind of built on it one after the other. The constitution only says that the Finance Commission should augment the resources of the state governments to in turn provide more resources to local government. So that's another interesting feature of how institutions evolve over a period of time and not feel constrained by the original constitutional language. Now, therefore, successive finance commissions have been given greater and greater grants. To give you a sense of the numbers only for urban, the total number for urban local governments was, I think, about 23,000 crores or so in the 13th Finance Commission. It went up to 87,000 crores in the 13th Finance Commission. It grew to 2,87,000 crores in. No, this is total local government. Yeah, okay. So we do have total. No, go back to that slide. That's a good slide. I didn't realize we had this. So this is a very useful slide to tell you the growth of local government grants. So like you can see, it's been an incredible growth from about 5,000 crores in 2000 to 8 lakh crores in 2030. So it's been a phenomenal increase, where the 13th to the 12th to 13th is a phenomenal jump of more than 3x. 13th to 14th is also a phenomenal jump of about 3x. 14th to 15th is not 3x, but is little less than 2x. Then again from 15th to 16th is another 2.3x or so, right? Or little less than 2x, And so you can see how substantial these amounts are becoming. Next. Did you have another slide before this?
It was the hit and the message.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Yeah, next. So this, no, you can go to the earlier one. No. Yeah, let's go in the order in which. So here we are giving you a picture on the urban-rural split. Now, another thing I need to tell you is the numbers that you saw in the earlier slides of the growth of local government grants from around 5,000 crores circa 2000 to potentially 8 lakh crores by 2030. Typically, in the last 2-3 finance commissions, essentially the 14th and the 15th finance commissions, have set aside about 4 to 4.2% of what is called the divisible pool. It's a phrase that you will see in the Finance Commission report or in news reports about the Finance Commission. The divisible pool essentially is what I described earlier, which is gross tax revenues plus union share of the goods and services tax, less cesses and surcharges, is what is called the divisible pool. So that is the amount that the Finance Commission divides between the union and the states, and also they give a share to the local governments. Typically, they've given about 4.2%. Now, they don't tell you this amount directly sometimes. Even in the 16th Finance Commission report, they have not told us how they arrived at 7,90,000 crores. But when Merin and team did some backworking to estimate the divisible pool projected into the future, we believe this may be slightly less than 4% in the current Finance Commission. But we are frankly not disappointed, because you have to balance the amount of money that goes along with the absorptive capacity of local governments to spend them. Otherwise, we'll shoot ourselves in the foot, because future Finance Commission and governments will start reducing the amount of money going to local governments, saying they are remaining unspent. So this is in absolute terms, it's a very large increase, and I think it's now the onus is on state governments to build the capacities of local governments to be able to use the money well. Next. So when you see the split between urban and rural, what you see on the LHS in blue color is the urban share. On the RHS is the rural share. Another interesting conversation we can have is people like us will go and tell the local government, give a greater share to urban, right? but people who work in the rural sector will go and tell the FC that in rural areas there are a lot of challenges. Please give a greater share there, which is where Anand's point about us working together can result in us making a joint pitch to the 17th Finance Commission to say, please break free from this limitation of 3 to 4% and give a significantly larger share to local governments. So instead of us fighting over share of a small cake, how can you grow the cake to a larger share so both rural local governments and urban local governments benefit? And that is important because in peer economies like, say, South Africa or Brazil, etc., evidence suggests that their local government share of public expenditure is far higher. In India, local government share of public expenditure is less than 2% or less than 1%. Whereas in countries like South Africa and Brazil, local government revenues, local government share of public expenditure is a far higher, 6 to 8%, etc. So that's something that we can do some joint advocacy towards. But like you can see that this Finance Commission has taken a very aggressive stance of increasing the urban share to about 45%. In some ways, recognizing already that India is far more urban than the 26% that is represented in Census 2011 for statutory towns or urban local governments, and anticipating that Census 2027 or 28 will end up with a somewhat similar percentage of urbanization. So this shows you that share. The other interesting thing that the Finance Commission has done, typically finance commissions being such high-powered constitutional bodies whose work is in the public glare, to whose work every single state government will be looking up to, will rely only on census numbers. But because Census 2011 is so outdated, 15 years outdated, and ground realities would have changed significantly, they have chosen to rely on population projections done by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare for 2026 as the basis for local government's chapter. So that's another interesting variation. I'll now hand it to Merin to cover the subsequent slides, and then I'll come back in during the Q&A. So Merin, if you can take about maybe 15 to 20 minutes, then we'll have enough time for Q&A.
Hello, everyone.
You should.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. As Srikanth have already given a gist of the recommendations by 16th FC and what are the highlights, I'm going to get into the specifics of the recommendation. Yes. He did say that we are not rural expert, but this is a slide we put together so that we give you an idea of how the rural side is also looking. So rural have historically been receiving the higher share of local government. This is based on their population share. Also, the FC recognize that they have lesser potential to raise their own source revenue. So they feel a need to supplement more on the rural side. So the 16th FC went ahead and gave 4.35 lakh crore to rural local governments. And if you can see the yellow portion, which is 80% is the basic grants. And FC chose 80% as basic grants because they believe that there's a need for these local governments to spend money with discussion on their needs, the local needs that they prefer. But 20% was tied to performance. This is their efficiency versus need rational. They feel like though FC FCs to supplement the resources. There is a need to push for efficiency in this local government, and they need to raise their own on-source revenue. So they linked 20% of the grants for performance grants. And this performance grants is split into two. One is the RLG component, in which the RLGs itself is asked to meet a growth rate of 1.025% of their previous year in order to get this grant. And there's also a state component. The state component, the rationale for FC to bringing the state component is that FCs are not substituting what state needs to do. Essentially, local governments are a state subject. Hence, there's a need for states to devolve more funds to local governments. Hence, they have introduced a state component where 20% of the basic grants that the Union Finance Commission is proposing should at least be devolved by the state every year for the ULGs to get their state component of performance share. Moving on. So this is how the urban quantum have grown over the different FC period, starting from the 10th FC. So the 10th FC, just to give you a brief idea, did not have a mandate to devolve funds to local government. It was not part of their terms of reference because the 74th Amendment and the 73rd Amendment has just been on, came, so they were not mandated to give money. Still, they recognized that there would be a need for these local governments because of their increased responsibility. They would require additional funding. So they went ahead and devolved funds to local government. There was about 4,300 crores that was devolved to local government, out of which urban local government got 1,000 crores. And then moving on to 11th FC, 11th FC had the mandate to devolve funds to local government. And 11th FC also doubled the funds to urban local government, still lesser than rural local government. And their rationale was urban has better potential to raise their own revenues, whereas rural doesn't. And when we came to 12th Finance Commission, they again increased the share to local government. Up until the 12th FC, the devolution to urban local bodies were ad hoc, and there wasn't linked to any formula or their population share. But in 13th FC, that changed. 13th FC, they linked the share of local governments to the relevant census, which is 2011. Hence, the 13th FC shared 26% of their total local government grants with the urban local government grant. And they also made this interesting recommendation that they recognize that local governments also need a share in the buoyancy of union government taxes. Hence, they tried to fix the grants to local government as a share of union taxes. But this is slightly conflicting with the constitutional requirement of giving grants to local government as a grant in aid rather than a percentage of taxes. Hence, they converted this percentage into grant in aid. And then there was a 14th FC, like Srikanth said, there was a 3x increase in the grants to local body. And in the same sense, there was an increase in grants to urban local body. 14th FC also took a population-based approach, hence 26%, hence a 30% based on 2011 census was given to urban. When it came to 15th FC, the 2011 census became slightly dated, and we did not have the recent census happen. So what they did, they went ahead and more than the population share of urban in 2011 census, they went ahead and gave 36% to urban local body, recognizing that there is a rapid urbanization happening, especially in the peri-urban areas, and also the economic importance of urban area. And this, you can see a similar trend in 16th FC. 16th FC also recognized that the census is outdated, rapid urbanization is happening, and urban contributes a lot more to economic growth. Hence, there's a need to invest more in urban. So they gave 44% of the local government grants to urban. This is a statewide share. I'll be skipping this, but we can later share this deck with you guys. And this is how the this is how the structure of the urban local government grants look like. So just like in rural and just like in rural counterpart, urban also has basic and performance grants. Apart from that, there are two special grants that urban got. One is special infrastructure component, which constituted 16% of the total urban grants. And then there's an urbanization premium of 3%, which the urban got. So this last two parts, special grants, we can discuss this in detail going ahead. Here, I just want to focus on basic and performance grants. The basic, similar to rural, there are two parts, it's tied and untied. So tied part, 50% is tied and 50% is untied. The tied part,
without quotation, you can send to Hema.
it is sectorally tied to sanitation. It is sectorally tied to sanitation, solid waste management, and water management. So the rationale FC gave is that when they looked at the union schemes like Amrut, JJM, or Swachh Bharat, they saw a lot of behavioral change when due to sectorally tying the devolution. Hence, they decided that 50% of grants, basic grants, will be tied to these sector. But from their, from what data showed from 15th FC, they also realized there's a need to increase the untied portion of grants to ULGs also. Hence, they kept the other 50% untied, and the ULGs can use it for their local needs. Apart from salary and establishment expense, and they have capped expenditure towards road construction and maintenance at 20%.
Please explain the difference between tied, untied, and performance and basic.
Sure. So when we say tied, we're telling tied to end purpose. Like the end purpose will be tied to a sector, like water, solid waste, or it could be air quality. For 15th FC, it was air quality. And then untied means it's not tied to the end purpose. You can spend it on any sectors or any local needs that they prefer. They can go ahead and spend it on building a library, a park, anything that the local government itself feel is required in their jurisdiction. And performance grants means it is linked to showing a certain achievement or a reform, or it's tied to showing a performance increase in any of the reform. And in terms of 16th FC, they've kept it fairly simple. I just want to go ahead and say that 13th FC was the first FC to introduce a performance element in the grant structure. And then 14th FC also went ahead and introduced a performance grant. There was performance grant structure in 15th FC also, but it's slightly different. And in 16th FC, all the local government grant, 20% is tied to performance grants. And in this, the ULG component, unlike the rural, which had a smaller percentage, smaller growth rate percentage that they need to achieve, for urban, it's 5% growth rate in OSR. It's tied to 5% growth rate in OSR. So in 15th FC, there was also a performance condition where they have to meet property tax growth rate in a tandem to the state's GSDP. But 16th FC made it more broader and say that they need to as a whole increase their OSR. And similar to the rural component, there's a state component, which again has the same rationale that state should be able, essentially local government and urban government are state subject, hence they need to devolve more to local government. They also recognize that right now under the State Finance Commission, the devolution is weak and uneven across the state. So they're trying to incentivize states to devolve more to local government. We can further discuss special infrastructure component and urban premium in the coming slides. So urbanization premium, which I would say is one of my personal, rural-urban transition is one of my personal favorite area to work in. It has to do with what we saw on ground when we went for field visit for 16th FC work. So we believe that there's a metamorphosis happening in the villages, not just the one that are closer to larger cities, but in isolated villages that they are becoming more and more like urban. They require services similar to urban areas. Hence, FC also recognized this. Hence, they set aside a 10,000 crore special grants for this. So the objective of this grant is, one, to ensure there's a systematic process in rural to urban transition. Second is recognizing that there is a lag in infrastructure in these areas, which is transitioning from rural to urban. Hence, they require fund support. So what they did is to incentivize state to think about rural-urban transition in a structured way. They mandated developing a rural-urban transition policy as a pre-requirement to get this grant. And then for every urban area which is getting merged with every rural area which is getting merged with an urban area more than 1 lakh population will get a per capita of 2,000 rupees from this 10,000 crore. Hence, I would feel like this is a very innovative grant in terms of 16th FC. They were not mandated to get into, or they were not required to get into the space of rural-urban transition. It was out of their mandate, but still they went ahead and recognized that this transition is happening on ground. Essentially, our data from City Finance, which is the digital grant management portal, for 15th FC, it was shown that post 2011, there were at least 1,000 ULGs that were formed. And we also conducted elaborate field visit to see that what is the current situation of these newly transitioned areas. So all that have informed in the creation or development of this special transitional grant. And there's a special infrastructure component grant. In this, FC have shifted this focus from the metro cities, and they've said that cities below the population of 4 million and above the population of 1 million, they are going to be the next set of economic growth centers. And there's a need for us to already start thinking about the infrastructure deficits in this area. And in this regard, they set aside 56,100 crores towards building infrastructure, especially in, which is tied to wastewater management. So they said that right now the infrastructure in terms of drain network is lacking in these areas. Hence, there's a need for the cities to collectively think about developing their drainage system. And the eligible cities are the cities cities with population less than 4 million and greater than 1 million. And in each state, only 2 of the cities will be qualified to get this grant. And also for all the basic grants, there are certain, apart from the performance grant, for the basic grants, there are 3 conditions that all the local government need to fulfill in order for them to get their basic grant. One is to ensure that they are a duly elected local government body. If you are, you might have read Bangalore still don't have a elected local government body. And 15th FC also had this as their core eligibility, and 16th FC recognized that this has brought in a lot of positive changes. A lot of states have proactively conducted their election, but still we are not there yet to remove this condition. Hence, they went ahead and continued this condition in 16th FC. The second one is public disclosure or audited account. 15th FC also had this condition, and because of this condition, right now in city finance, we have 96% of audited accounts available. And this is huge. This is huge in terms of that right now we can look at data and say that the condition of the performance condition of OSR, they have leveraged the data from this audited accounts. So right now we are not, we are making policies which are data driven, and this condition of 15th FC has played a huge role in this. The next one is constitution of SFC and tabling SFC report and action taken report within 6 months of submission. 15th FC also had the same eligibility condition, because of which 11 states which were not continuously constituting SFC have went ahead and constituted SFC.
Say what else?
SFCs are State Finance Commission, So under the constitutional article of 243Y and 243X, states are supposed to devolve their funds to local government as per the recommendations of SFC. Right now, this is a weak institution across the states in India. There are states which have proactively been constituting SFC, but there are states which haven't constituted SFC for the longest time. And inside that also there's, unlike the UFC, which is very strengthened and which is very publicly scrutinized for their recommendations, there's less of public scrutiny in SFC, of which they still remain very institutionally weak.
Can you go to highlights?
Yes.
Just headline the highlights and list opportunities, then let's open it up.
Okay. So I'll just go back again to our highlight slides. I know that Srikanth have already taken us through this, but now that we have double-clicked on each one of these recommendations, you will be more able to understand that why these are like the highlights recommendations by 16th FC. The quantum increase of 230 from 15th FC to 16th FC is huge for urban. And then there is urbanization premium, which is a very innovative special grants where FC is recognizing there's a rapid transition happening from rural to urban and incentivizing state to more proactively think about this in a systematic way. And they have recognized that these are not local bodies or service delivery bodies; these are local governments, and there's a need to preserve their autonomy in deciding where should they spend their amount on. The special infrastructure component, where we are focusing on the Tier 2 city and their infrastructure to ensure that when they are becoming the economic growth, there's adequate infrastructure and quality of life in these cities. And then the performance grants of OSR, which ensures the self-sufficiencies of ULGs. So they move, even though local governments are very much dependent on grants, they move towards a self-sufficient government where they are able to meet their own expenditure using their revenue potential. There were also continuity. So 15th FC have linked a lot of reforms to grant devolution, which have shown the impact. Like I said, 96% of availability or audited annual accounts, and 11 states forming State Finance Commission. 16th FC have helped institutionalize this or weave this into system by continuing these reforms. So that's it from our end. We can. Sorry, there's one more slide which we want to think as from an organizational point of view, which we thought that 16th FC have slightly missed on. One, the 15th FC had a differentiated approach in terms of urban grants. They had split the population category into million plus and non-million plus, recognizing the needs of this, the potential and the capacity of these two population sets are different. But 16th FC have given the same, have taken a one-size-fits-all approach for urban grant structure. Another one is that we right now have audited financial statements of these ULGs available in city finance. We could have gone ahead and asked for budget availability. We could have mandated service level benchmark availability as well, so that we focus, we move little forward about getting to understanding how ULGs plan for their infrastructure expense through budget and to see the outcome through SLBs. And another is that not focusing on how cities plan. So like Srikanth said, that giving unprecedented amount of grants or money to these local governments are not enough. We should incentivize them to plan in a better way, though they are efficiently and effectively able to ensure that these translates into outcomes. Another one is that local government bodies like the urban contributes to at least 60% of GDP of India. So there's a need to see them as economic centers. We should, like I said, we should move away from thinking of them as a service delivery agents to seeing them as the center of economic growth. And we should also push them to think from an economic lens. So these are few factors which 16th FC missed out on.